All right, I'm back.
Shellfish Advisory Board, anyway.
Thanks, Becca.
All right.
Thanks,
All right,
Jake.
are we ready to go? I call the meeting to order at 8:57 on September 16th.
This meeting, Tom, was actually started from NRAB. We're in the process of putting together our harbor management plan. There's a chapter in it about shellfishing, and I just wanted to get some background and information about four topics. The first one is the plastics issue. We're looking forward to being able to support Shellfish Advisory Board in this, but need to know some of the background. What is the risk to the shellfish community if the plastics are not properly dealt with? What is the source of the plastics? A little bit about the history and the background and the consequences would be useful. So I don't know, Becca, you want us to take a shot at that, or Nancy?
I'm not caffeinated enough yet for this. If Nancy wants to go.
Just about, about plastics in the harbor?
Well, as they affect shellfishing. For example, have people seen any of their business at risk because of microplastics?
No, not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
Good.
Yeah, there have been some studies coming out
Yes, there have
about stuff found in oysters, but nothing substantial yet. And so the Shellfish Advisory kind of made an effort, led by Dave Seitler, to see how we can look at our own industry and limit plastics in that way, because just a matter of fact, we use a lot of plastics for our bags and our ties, and it was more about us just contributing plastic to the environment rather than worrying about plastics affecting our product. But, we do worry about other sources of plastics, like getting in the groundwater and then eventually finding their way into the ocean and then into the shellfish.
Has the issue of plastics in shellfish arisen anywhere else in the eastern United States?
No, it's not something that's like really.
The consumers
people
aren't
worry
terribly
about.
aware.
Yeah, any more so than any other seafood or any other food. You read about things like, oh, plastics found in fish, or we're all ingesting microplastics. There's not really anything more that at least I'm aware of that have come out about specifically shellfish.
Okay.
We've been contacted, the department has been contacted by somebody who I think is working with doing a paper for Woods Hole. She's like a fellow doing a paper for Woods Hole Sea Grant, I believe. And Johnny and I have been corresponding back and forth with her. She wants to do sampling here in Wellfleet Harbor for microplastics. We haven't really gotten into the implementation. I want to run it by Shellfish Advisory first.
Okay. That's reassuring. I have to say, just as a citizen of town, I've always been impressed with the way shellfishermen have led an effort to keep the harbor and beaches clean. So this is more of the same, and I personally applaud that. Second issue I wanted to raise is maybe a little longer discussion. It's about climate change and how you see that as affecting the shellfish industry and business, and what steps are being discussed to meet the challenge. One of the main issues that NRAB has discussed thus far is sea level rise and how we're going to meet the consequences of that, particularly for salt marshes. But we also need to be able to talk about how the shellfish industry is affected. So put that on the floor for open discussion.
I guess my first piece of feedback, Jake served on that committee with Barbara Brennesol and others that came out with
Did
that
too.
climate change. And Becca, yeah.
Yep.
And I wonder whether it would be worthwhile to pick that kind of working document back up and look at how we might pick and choose a couple of things to address in the next whatever years of your management plan. But I'd defer to Becca and Jake because they're the ones that were on that committee.
That was about 7 years ago. It would be interesting to look at it and see if anything has changed in the last 7 years specifically related to what we had brainstormed about. We had talked about with sea level rise and how we access our grants would become different. The warming waters, which I think we've seen this year with the spat not being in the water when we thought it was going to be. So oyster spat collection has been kind of off. Changes in seaweed. We've definitely had different seaweed again this year than we've had over the past 5 years, which can affect how our filter feeding shellfish are processing and are able to access water flow. What else, Jake?
Yeah, Becca, I think you hit on a lot of the stuff. I would definitely refer back to that thing we did with Seth Tuller because we really went in depth with all of these topics. And, it's interesting with climate change. You kind of wonder what they contributed because the things that happen on the ground are so immediate. Like we, with the set this year, for example, like Becca was talking about, the set came early. And in pretty much the 10 years of me really doing hats, it's never come like that. It's always been really solid. Like the first week of July, we put our hats out and the early stuff catches okay. The middle stuff catches great. And then the later stuff that we put out over the course of a month doesn't catch as good. Now this year with the water and weather being so warm early, the set came really early and it kind of messed up catching our seed, and it has a big effect. I mean, we have a lot less seed because of it. So it's just hard to wonder, to contribute that to, is that climate change? Probably, but it's like, or is that just
an off
anomaly
year.
of a year, an off year, and then next year it will be hard. So it's like, do you adjust your business and put the hats out early with the worry that they could slime up and then your set wouldn't be as good? So like getting in depth with stuff like these are just some of the issues you have like when you're on the ground farming that you deal with and how to adjust your business or not year to year.
I've also noticed not necessarily different predators moving in, but we usually get like a blue crab or two every couple of years, and we've had at least 4 pairs of blue crabs that I've seen on my grant this year.
They're everywhere this year.
Yeah. There's definitely more of them this year. So,
as someone who's spent their childhood on the Jersey coast fishing for blue crabs, I think that is a good thing. I'm sorry.
I've only ever seen 2 at a time, so I've never brought them home to eat. And this time I saw enough, I thought about it.
Yeah, I want to try them. I haven't tried it yet either, but I will.
Couple of comments. I have reread the Tuller report several times, and it's still, I agree, it's an outstanding piece of work. It's still totally relevant, and I was going to suggest to NRAB that be an appendix to our harbor management plan because it is still useful. The other thing about, I'm a bird watcher amongst other things, and in the birding world, one of the effects of climate change is, I think, similar to something that you reported for shellfishing, and this was work done in Britain, that birds migrate according to the sun. They use the sun as a clock, but the the plants and flowers in Britain
Mm-hmm.
bloom according to the temperature. And so they started to bloom early, and the birds would arrive too late, and that hurt the populations. What happened in nature, though, is that some of the birds had screwed up genes, and those screwed up genes told them to migrate early, and they were the ones that survived, and they therefore were the progenitors of the next generation of birds.
Active
So
evolution.
deficient genetic diversity, I think, is critical to accommodating to changes in temperature and other events.
Yeah, totally. That's really interesting, and it applies to shellfishing too, with like species diversity, like how we looked at other species like blood clams and butter clams, and perhaps maybe if the temperatures change or something changes with the water, perhaps those species will come even more prominent in the harbor and be able to harvest and grow those.
Well, not only that, Jake, but if you consider the shellfishing on the south shore of the Cape or in Chesapeake Bay, those are waters which are warmer than Wellfleet, so it is possible to accommodate.
Yeah.
What
Definitely.
does the word phenology mean? I think I know, but I'd like to hear it explained.
I had to look it up. It's okay, so it's the changing over time of water chemistry and plant life in the water. That's my understanding. I'm not an encyclopedia, but that's what I got out of it. It looks at how things change unexpectedly over time when it comes to plant life in the water and life in the water.
Sounds like that's what Jake was talking about.
And before we get to phenology, the one thing when it comes to climate change, the sea level rise seems to be a part of climate change. And my concern is that 50 years down the road is that, Chipman's Cove, some of the flats may be more underwater than they are now.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean? Does that mean that we're going to lose a lot of our oysters to that? Does it mean we're just going to be in waders to handpick oysters? So, I'm sure that, either Graham Geis or maybe it's in the Tula report and I just overlooked it, but some planning for when the water level comes up, what's going to happen? Is everybody going to be fishing in the deep water then?
I think we did talk about that with the Tula report, because we did point out that accessing the grants was going to be more difficult. And as the water came up higher, all of the houses and the breakwaters that people have up against the beach, that we need to stop that, because the water needs to be able to go back up into the marshes.
Mm-hmm.
And that we needed to work with the town on changing the bylaws about where you can have your septic tanks and where you can have erosion walls, because all of that does need to move. Because yes, we are going to be out there in deeper waders as the water comes in. There were two things that just occurred to me about the global warming that I don't think I had thought about. I'm looking at the sky and I'm wondering, it's pretty milky right now from the smoke from the West Coast. I hadn't really thought about how that might affect the, oh, I've got feedback on my phone. Sorry. How that might affect the algae growth that the animals, that the shellfish feed on. Or not algae, but life forms. Because it's, what if we're having more forest fires? That will affect the sunlight quantity. And what was the other one? I should have taken notes. All right, go on.
I need to
So-
double check. I need to double check some data, but one of the things I've seen about sea level rise is that it doesn't really take off for another 10 years.
Okay,
Let me
well,
double
let's
check that to be sure. So we
That's
have
what it
some
was,
planning.
hurricanes.
Oh yeah, hurricanes. Hurricanes are, this is a record year for it.
Exactly.
So the question I have is, so Chipman's Cove is an example, but there's other flats in town that would be affected too. So has anybody taken the time to figure out, is it going to be 20 years? Is it going to be 30 years before we start having difficulty getting out at, where there's no water on the flats?
I don't think anyone has done a specific harbor, like around the harbor of when the tide is going to reach that point. I think it's been more generic.
So, well, and the other question is what does that do to the oysters? I mean, our oysters are used to being out in the air for a good portion of the, of low tide. And if that stops, what does that do? I mean,
To probably make them happier.
I guess the oysters
People
prefer
drag
being
for them,
underwater.
so they're out in the deep water too.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, there's
that,
like,
Go ahead, Jake.
I was just gonna say, like, besides the access thing, you could have like increased fouling. Yeah, there's like benefits to having the oysters longer in the water, like more growth. But there's also, you can get if they're not exposed to
Or
air, you can get
seaweed.
fouling and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, oysters are really adaptable. I think they would be fine, the animals themselves.
And what I was going to say was more like access. I'm pretty sure that FEMA has flood maps, that they considered that you were in a floodplain. You all got a notice about it for insurance reasons with your homes. But I'm sure that there are, maps somewhere that demonstrate, the 5, 10, 20, whatever year increases that they're expecting. So, I mean, that might just be something that a separate little working group looks at some point. I mean, I know it's not an imminent danger, but I also feel that, the more forward thinking we can be on this so that we're adapting before we're reacting would be beneficial, because this industry is so important to the town's livelihood.
Right. I've seen those interactive maps that show 10, 20, 40, 50 years down the road. And they're usually in places like Boston and Manhattan, so that people have in huge population areas have an idea. I don't know what we have for out here on the Cape.
That's the FEMA reports I've seen are all concerned with issues on the land, roads getting overwashed, things like that. I'm just trying to remember. I think Mark Borelli at the Center for Coastal Studies did some work in which he looked at the contours of the harbor, and if he's got those, it would be pretty easy to put that together with some sea level rise data, and we would be able to predict how that would affect shellfishing access and growth. I'll try to get in touch with Mark and see if that's actually going to be useful.
One of the
other
things.
issue I wanted. Sorry.
I was going to say, one of the things might be regulations to look at, because we don't have deep water grants. We have tidal flat grants. So state regulations and town regulations might need to be altered so that we can continue having farms here.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, with the, we don't allow floating gear, and
Right.
highly doubt with the right whale situation and the way that DMF is going, because they're finding impaired water quality around floating gear, they're kind of based on floating gear anyway, because it's causing closures because of bird congregations and defecations. So, you know, that's just something that we need to keep in mind. It might not actually be an option for us to even add floating gear.
Okay.
One other issue that I wanted to raise in connection with climate change and warming is diseases. Do you consider that warming water raises the risk of shellfish diseases or shellfish disease transmissions?
My answer is I'm not sure. We get our shellfish tested, both our clams and our oysters, and it just varies year to year. Like some years, one disease, we have a few different clam diseases. Some years one will be a lot more prevalent, and then other years another will be prevalent. I'm not sure how the rate of diseases like correlates with the water temperature, but most likely, I mean, maybe it would make us more susceptible. I know they have different diseases down south, I think. So, yeah, I'm just not sure.
I haven't. Has anybody looked into what diseases they have in the more southern waters that affect quahogs and oysters? Well, I hadn't thought to do that.
Without it being a disease, but Vibrio, right? I mean, we didn't used to really have it in prevalence here. And when you look at water bodies that maybe have a little bit less flow than ours, like Tama and Duxbury, which continue even this year to struggle with Vibrio. And just that could be something that could happen if the water overall, and we could have a greater presence of Vibrio parahemolyticus in our waters than we do right now.
Well, there were just, was it Connecticut? There were just a bunch of cases of Vibrio vulnificus that,
Oh God.
Yeah, there were like 5 cases or something, and most of them ended up in the hospital with infections.
No, I didn't hear that.
From swimming in the water.
Yeah.
I think it was Connecticut. It was pretty close.
Yeah. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just said it's a Florida thing. You know, one would think usually.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's the diseases that affect and the shellfish and will cause mortality in the shellfish, and then there's the diseases that won't cause mortality in the shellfish that affect the people. And you know, there's both things to worry about. I think, you know, as the water warms, probably the ones that affect the people and don't affect the shellfish, like Vibrio, is something that we're going to have to be more conscious of as it gets warmer and might affect us more.
It would seem to me, and I would recommend this as thinking aloud as a recommendation, is that we as a town and shellfishermen and natural resource enthusiasts should pay a lot of attention to what's happening further south along the Atlantic coast.
I agree.
We should try to find out how to be sure we're tied into that. Because what happens there is going to happen to us. Those are the subjects I wanted to bring up. I would put the question to the Shellfish Advisory Board and to Nancy in particular. Are there any other subjects which spring to mind now that you would like to see us address in the harbor management plan as affects shellfishing? I think these were the sort of the main points, but perhaps I've forgotten something.
Maintaining decent water quality.
Good point.
Yeah, and that can tie in with, you know, some of the wastewater committee work.
I think they're making some good progress, but that we should reinforce that.
Yep, continued changing access as the tides get higher, that we can still get across the beaches where we need to, that the water quality maintains a decent level so that we can actually harvest. Let's see, the potential for changing regulations as we need to. What else did we talk about in general?
Access, I think you said that.
Access, yep.
The rights of public access committee, another group that we could tie into to, you know, just look at the places that are going to be identified and then think of them from a climate change perspective, sea level rise, and what we might do to make sure that they are still able to be.
It's a little selfish, but also being able to drive our trucks between the high tide and low tide line as the tide line moves up, because that's how we harvest. Being able to get our equipment and boats to the areas.
True.
It's not selfish. I think that's part of the business model.
Yeah. I mean, I rely on a truck.
Yeah, no, a lot of people do.
Becca, where's your grant?
Right on Mayo Beach, right next to Jake's.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know where that is. Fair enough.
Also, I have. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna mention something about access. Did the town recently transfer a town landing near Mayo Beach to the conservation trust? Did I see that somewhere?
It did not happen.
Yeah. It didn't happen. Okay.
Okay.
It was Keller's Corner and a couple of parcels moving eastward on Mayo Beach. So they continue to remain under the control of the select board.
Okay. Yeah, the only reason, just bringing up access and thinking about that, like, you know, if, I don't know if you could ever make a new truck access, but if we ever had to, like keeping that area as the landing, I don't know what it would take to be able to make a new road access, but I was just thinking for us who have grants there, that if we needed to move it for whatever reason at some point, because sometimes the access that we do have gets a little challenging, that that area would be good. But yeah, something to think about down the road, but yeah.
And although not ideal in terms of traversing more territory, but you know, there is Powers Landing, and we might, you know, there's definitely issues over at Omaha Road, resolvable, but it's just something for us to always keep in mind, like Jake's saying, what are some other potential access routes if we lose one?
That's a very good point, because the further we have to drive the trucks, the more degradation there is to the beach. So it does make sense to have more off roads than you'd think.
Yeah, and the way the sand, you know, there might be spots where, you know, some days where the sand gets really soft and we can't drive down there, or, you know, with people owning in front of the beach, you have those sorts of issues too. So it's always good to keep as much as you can available.
Yeah, and oh geez, there was something else I was going to say about access. You know, the beach renourishment projects they really, you know, I understand that they're mandated by the state and by an order of conditions with the Conservation Commission, but they have been obviously adding to problems with access. For example, like all the beach renourishment that happened at Seychelles migrated to Powers Landing, and that's really been a difficult summer to get on and off at Powers. And then the same thing happened with two projects at Samoset, which made the Omaha Landing really soft, and you got a ton of trucks with trailers going on and off there. It's been problematic. Not to mention beach renourishment projects, like for example, down at the end of King Philip Road, that then went and put 6 inches of sand on people's clam beds that they had to dig out. So something, you know, we need to look in a big picture sort of way. You know, these are things that are required of homeowners, but they are having detrimental impacts on the environment, even though they were set up as a benefit to replace sand that gets scoured away. But the problem is that sand doesn't stay where you put it anyway. So that might be something for us to look at in the long term as well. About, how do we create a balance in these efforts?
Nancy, it's Helen. Can I add something to that, please? Tom? Sajia?
Yes, Ellen.
Yeah. So as some of us know, the reason you're renourishing is because there are jetties and human-made armoring situations like revetments that cause scouring to happen wherever those rigid structures are not. In other words, you don't have that kind of need for renourishment unless you have those rigid human-made situations. And that should come into the discussion of this. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Helen.
Can I
I look
throw
at,
in something?
go ahead, John.
Yeah,
Go ahead, John.
without getting a chuckle here is speaking of future thinking, what about huge oversized drones for use in shellfishing? I mean, do you see drones? Everybody's using drones now to do things. Is there going to be any practical use for drones to alleviate access to the water?
I'd like a little submarine drone, but financially, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think that's a possibility.
Yeah. I think just ropes and on cages and that kind of stuff, we'll have to do for now.
Well, I'm
But,
thinking about.
yeah, you never know the way the technology's going. I mean, it could be a
at least
possibility.
for getting stuff on and off the beach instead of having to drive on the beach.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Fly it right in.
Yeah, fly it right in, and you
Is
still have
the
to go
town
out.
gonna get one?
Well, hey,
You could go,
you're
you could go
laughing
directly
now.
from beach to market.
You're
Yeah.
laughing now, but Amazon's dropping packages out of the sky every day. So
Tom had a point he wanted to make.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, I look at this thing as this conversation. There's a lot of future concerns that we have. The what if? What if the water temperature got to 80 degrees? How would that affect us? A, B, C, D. And I think we got to take a look at it in that light, and then link it back to both other committees that are working on issues where we might need their help, and also our regs to make sure that we can adjust. Becca can adjust. Jake can adjust. Without going through a delay, quote unquote, because our regs say one thing and we know that's incorrect now, 10 years from now. So we might have to adjust. We got the water quality, we got the tides, we got the vehicles. We got a lot of drones, et cetera, et cetera. I think we really got a table somewhere, John, maybe in this plan that we're putting together. But I think the future concerns are real, and I think they're going to happen a lot sooner than what might somebody believe.
I'm gonna say this year is showing us that the future is now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can use an example, Nancy, maybe on the SPAT. I mean, what happened with SPAT this year? Was it a good year or a bad year? Table it, and let's see what happens next year. If it's another bad year or good year, then we got a trend.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a huge industry here.
I thought if I could go back just for a second, the discussion about access started with talking about Mayo Beach was interesting. Most of the concern about salt marshes for example, beaches, has been by the conservation-driven community in town, of which I'm a member. So, and you know, the issues of shellfish access have never really come up. There, some of you may know there's a new committee on public access. I'm actually a member of it, and I can carry the message to the other members. I've forgotten what, I don't even know what, it's such a new committee. I don't even know what the formal name of it is. Jim Falcone is likely to be chairperson of it. But you guys should be sure that you connect with this committee and make your issues known.
I have that as, I've proposed landings as a topic for future Shellfish Advisory Board meetings so that we can provide that, or Shellfish Advisory can provide that.
Oh, that's what we were talking about with landings. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, to this new committee. We have tried to map out a lot of different landings, but I really would like feedback, not only from Shellfish Advisory Board, from the shellfishing community overall, both commercial and recreational. Where have they been historically accessing?
I think Nancy, my one thought is that is particularly for the shell fishermen who do wild picking. Where are the shellfish in town? Because that's where you want to get to. And I don't know if we have survey data would show that, or you do, but that would be useful background.
Yeah, I mean, shellfish, you know, wild shellfish occur everywhere in town, and some years it's better on this area than other areas, but you know,
Okay, so you need a variety of sites.
yeah, you need to kind of look at them all because you never know where the good set's going to be.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you.
If it doesn't get ice, then they might have a better survival rate.
Tom, as far as I'm concerned, we've had a good discussion, and my questions have been answered. I don't know, John and Laura, do you have any other issues you want to raise and ask for the some input from the Shellfish Advisory Board? Otherwise, we should all move on.
I have a Shellfish Advisory Board couple of questions. And they would be, first of all, I'd like to figure out how the Shellfish Advisory Board could begin looking for some new blood. I think we're, you know, at this point, we're looking for a new chair. Zach is not going to be taking he's not going to be our recording secretary anymore. So a question that I have is that, are other boards in town, is there any such thing as a recording secretary that just does that? That's not a part of the board? Helen, maybe that's a question for you.
Yes, I can answer this. Back in the day, Charter Review Committee, the incarnation of it before the last one, there was an amazing woman called Barbara Taylor who wasn't on anything, but she came and she reliably and very well did minute taking for them. In other words, she was a volunteer who committed. She was not part of the Charter Review Committee, but she did the job as if she was a paid professional. And she was professional in many ways.
Well, that would alleviate one problem we have right now, because
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Zach does not want to be the recording
So
secretary.
my advice is to scour the shellfishing community for someone who has those skills, right?
We wouldn't be shellfishing if we had those skills.
That's not true. Hold on. No, you know, Becca, I don't accept that. I really don't. I mean, you're not all nonverbal. Artists get that kind of scam too. Not scam, but put down too. I won't accept that. Some of you are absolutely brilliant. And the thing
Just
is
not
that,
scribes.
I mean, I am tempted to offer to do the administrative work again, which I used to do. I did everything but the minutes. But I really don't feel that's a good idea because I'm on your appointing authority now. But I know
Oh.
just what it takes. I did it for 8 years, you know, or 7.5 years. So you got to look around for someone who'd be willing to do it, who understands the language, or is scholarly enough to do a quick study. Is a quick study. You see what I mean?
Okay,
Because you have to, in order to do, let's say, the minutes, and that person could also post, which is very easy. I mean, I could talk somebody through it in 15 minutes. You know, and I did it for years, and you can get somebody else. So that's the long answer to the short question. They don't have to be a member.
no, and that's fine. And I don't even think they need to be a shell fisherman particularly either. They just need to have an interest in shell fishing in the town, right?
They also need to be able to, and not every smart person can do this, Becca, and you and I know this. They have to be able to read the regulations, have some traction on the language, and also have the skill set so they can write an English sentence, which is not always easy. And, you know, I have to do 4 drafts before I can write an English sentence. But the point is, you need somebody who isn't put off by having to do that kind of work. So, you know, good luck with that. But there are a lot of people out there, you know,
All
and
right, well,
it really helps.
other than knocking on doors, one of the ways to do that might be the shellfish crier, Nancy. I don't know if that's something that's
Sure.
posting, that we're
Yeah.
looking for members. in the
Looking for a
Shellfish-
secretary specifically. Doesn't
Well,
have to be a
yeah,
member.
Shellfish
How
Advisory
many
Board is looking for some new members and looking for a recording
how many
secretary.
member seats do we actually have? Because both those guys were planning to stay.
Well, we have
Uh,
alternate positions. I believe we have one open alternate right now, right?
Let me just see. I was just on there. Hold on. Bear with me 1 minute. Just scrolling back over. So it's 7 regular plus 2 alternate. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 regular. And then we have 1 alternate, which is Damien. So we could use 1 more alternate. And so it sounds like the first order of business for the next Shellfish Advisory Board meeting will be, you know, reorganization of the board, election of new chair, election of new recording secretary, and recruitment of alternate. Because I don't know, like an alternate, if they're an alternate, can they take the minutes? Maybe they can.
It doesn't, Nancy, to answer your question, it doesn't matter. And you don't need an alternate as much as you need somebody to do the recording. And remember, alternates aren't necessary. They're desirable, they're just not necessary for me.
Well, as a way to step up into a full-time member of the board, that's one way to go. And I also, my proposal is that, you know, in terms of a recording secretary, maybe a town employee could do something like that. That's my question.
It'd be nice if someone could get paid to do the
Well,
job.
that's what I'm
It's
thinking.
a big
you know?
job.
So when it comes to the select board meeting, isn't there a secretary that's their sole purpose there is to sit at the meeting and take the notes, and they're paid for that?
John, this discussion has been had over and over. This is Helen.
Okay.
All the regulatory boards have secretaries. And the ZBA, and the ZBA does too. But none of the many other committees.
Regulatory boards, they get it.
Okay, you know, and select board, which is, you know, a regulatory board for
I got it.
shellfishing.
Okay.
But the point is, yeah, the people that are doing that, as Nancy knows, are overcommitted. And typically, all the other committees, and there are a whole lot of them, have to be taking their own minutes. And it's not that hard for someone who isn't challenged by processing thoughts into language, which is just a skill set that not everybody has. Not every really smart person has it. And you just have to find that person. And guess what? Shellfish Committee doesn't meet that often. So that's an attraction, you know. Somebody's out there. And I would contact David Wright, who does it for the WES, Wellfleet WSA, the Wellfleet Shellfishing Association, right, Jake? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Yeah. So somebody's out there. And I think it's fun going to your meetings, but you know, I'm weird. Okay, thank you.
One thing that I was going to say, just going back to the harbor management plan, do you, I know you have emailed me many times, John, Dwayne, and thank you for your patience. Do you need from me landings information, or I think I sent you the spreadsheet already? And then the other thing that I see and what you sent me was permits. And I didn't know what you might need in terms of how many permits we've sold. I mean, I usually do like an end of the year recap, so I could send you all the different years. I don't have it in a table like I see you have in the draft you sent me. But is there anything that you're kind of waiting on me for?
Well, so this is
Particular?
something that Laura and I are working on. It's a chapter on shellfishing in the harbor
Right.
management plan. So the access points, I think we've got, yeah, I'm looking at trends and statistics. So the last harbor management plan was 2005. So we're looking at 15 years worth of backtracking. So, you know, dollar amounts, numbers, a lot of it should be available from DMF. I tried getting that. I believe his name is Eric Druskat. And
Not going to happen.
Not
It's
going to
not.
happen.
They are absolutely buried in CARES Act, trying to get the
Right.
CARES Act 20.
Yes.
Yeah.
So town reports might have it. You know, when it comes to doing detective work like that, I'm not that good. So
I mean, I
anything
have it from 2000. I have a very large data set, which I can send you. It's at least 10 years, and it goes, I think, through 2018.
Okay, well, if you can
Yeah,
figure out a way to put that into a usable, if whatever it is,
It's in a spreadsheet right now.
Excel.
It's in an Excel spreadsheet.
I probably can look at that and figure out a way to make it work.
Nancy, I
Okay.
have,
Mhm.
can I just jump in for a second? I have that shellfish landing spreadsheet, and it goes through 2018. I was going to ask you if you could extend it to 2019.
Yeah, I can't do it now because of what's going on at the statistics team at DMF.
Okay.
They're buried, and until they distribute all the CARES Act money, which they just sent out to the commercial fishery to 8,000 people,
Twice.
yeah, I can't, I don't think we're gonna get that right now, but if we just put a placeholder in, maybe in a couple of months when they get that distributed, we could just plug it in.
And the other point, and we haven't discussed this even in NRAB, so this is my current thinking, is that with this new committee coming on access, my view is that NREB would transfer most of our responsibilities. There's a few action items that we still have to address over to that new committee. So I think, again, as you think about any access sites or access issues, please get in touch with Jim or myself in respect to the new committee, not the old one.
When are they going to be meeting? Has anybody figured that out yet?
Where Jim's trying to get together a quorum for Monday. And we're not sure we have a quorum, and we certainly don't have a time.
Okay, whenever you get a link, I'd love to attend.
Okay.
Yeah, and I
Well,
hope you can copy me on whoever does that outreach.
Okay, I'll try to take that responsibility on. Don't shoot if it doesn't work.
I'm gonna email Jim right now too.
Okay.
The key for us, obviously, is we don't want to lose any access points that we currently have that may have been neglected over the years that we want to continue to be able to use. Which seems to me that's the purpose of the board.
Well, but then, there's a new purpose, this business of trying to drive over soft sand that came up earlier. That affects our accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any outreach towards the old fishermen to find out what the old access points were? If anything has
Committee's
gone
not
out of
yet
use
met.
currently? Okay.
That was going to be a topic of conversation in the next Shellfish Advisory Board meeting. Was please, it was going to be one of the agenda items. Was anybody that's got any information about access points that they use or are used to use, please move it forward.
I have copies of Irene Payne's. What was you?
There's a great YouTube video.
Like a film, yeah.
Mhm.
But I haven't looked at it for several years, and in part because it's not available in the modern format. I'm not even sure I have any more that I can look at it.
The
Really?
Shellfish Department GPSed every landing and put it onto our Google Earth account. So that
Really?
we could show at a meeting, like if I shared my screen. Yep. I don't have
That's
a good.
awesome.
Yeah. Yep. We did that.
That would be terrific.
This is why I would like to get like a public meeting. It's just too bad about COVID that we can't, because it's going to be hard to get shellfishermen to tune in via Zoom.
Right.
My desire would be to have a big map and have people put pins or, direct us to where they have used access for landing shellfish.
Is
And
there
that's
a way to put that
fast on
up
this
someplace?
Hmm?
Could a map be put up someplace, like under the awning at the ball field, and then just say, like, over the next week, take yourself over there when nobody else is there and stick a pin in it, and then give them a chance to go by and do that?
Yeah, I'd have to figure out how to get a big print made, maybe by emailing Staples or something.
Well, the other thing is,
Or
Maybe
in
I'll
the
have-
post office or something, a building that's open that people could walk through and tack it up.
yeah, but
Yep.
if you do something like that, putting a pin in it is like if you're literally just going to put a thumbtack in there, you need to know, don't you need to know who's putting the pin in? I mean, somebody represents it here, used to be in access, but it would be nice to be able to follow up with them.
Maybe it's manned. Maybe we have it like a few hours a day for a week, and we do reminders via text message or something. And people can, even right here in front of our office with the map.
You could put a box where people could, the thumbtack could have a number on it. You put your name in the
Right,
box.
your
so it
name to your
wasn't-
number. And
So it wasn't public information,
All right, let's talk
One thing
about-
along these lines, just real quick, one thing I thought about, just to the access group, is the assessor's map like the end all be all? Is that like everything you base it off of? Or could that have some incorrect information possibly, and you'd have to like go back to the deeds and look at like individual deeds?
May I address that? It's Helen. Jake, you're right. One of the things I hope the Access Committee does is clarify, or in many cases simply re-clarify, that having a landing or having a place where people just inadvertently got onto the beach, right, Doesn't always mean it's legal. And I know of 2 cases where in order to get to the landing, you have to use private roads. And the thing not to do is to get into a collision course with people in subdivisions, to have it be something that's worked out and clarified and that functions well. Because if you have a situation where it's a private road in a subdivision, as it is for a section of what's on Lieutenant Island, there is a short stretch of subdivision road that leads to the place where there's another private property, the Audubon property, and then there's a beach, and I think there's a landing there. I can't quite remember if it's a town landing or not, but all that needs to be looked at carefully and diplomatically so that the access points that are legally there.
So how do we have public landing, a public beach, but no access to them?
Well, access, you know this. If it's a private road that you need to drive on to get to the public landing, which is the case with Omaha Road, or has been the case with Omaha Road, for years, you need permission from the people in the subdivision to use it. And Dorothy Sterling got around that. It actually wasn't totally perfect, but she let people come as her guests. In other words, if I live in a subdivision and Becca, you want to visit me, you can do that because you're coming to see me on my lot that I own in the subdivision. Dorothy Sterling was 1 lot shy of the beach, of a landing. There's 1 more lot between her and the beach. Never mind, it worked for years, but here's something I want to bring up that Nancy knows about. And I'm going to do it briefly. I need to get permission to sit down with town council because I'm almost positive that because our status has changed in relation to that subdivision that Dorothy Sterling lived in, we are now owners. We, the town, now owns a lot in what that huge piece of land included. We own that intertidal lot that used to be part of the huge lot. I now have a map of it, which I got from Nancy last week, of what it looked like before all those lots were on there up on the hill, up on the scarp. That subdivision included the Hadilta property, which was separated off, which is why we could buy it. And I would like to know what our new status is in relation to that subdivision. In other words, can we use the ways there legally, the way anybody else in the subdivision can, or not? And the only thing Harry Turkanian said to me last year when I was talking with him about this kind of thing, he didn't give me the legal opinion. He just said there might be an issue with the fact that when you access your lot because you want to go to your aquaculture lease using the private road, which is Omaha Road, it's a subdivision way, can you use it for commercial purposes? Is there some kind of protective covenant within that subdivision? And that's research I haven't done. It would be in the registry of deeds where you have to include what are called protective covenants, which are private agreements. Planning board can't touch them when you register your deed. So that's a pretty simple amount of research that I haven't done. In other words, don't go around saying we know this for sure, but I think it's a pretty good chance that we have a different status with regard to Omaha Road. Not so much in other places, right? So the punchline is, not every place that people have been accessing the shore or their grants or just accessing a public landing, not every one of those accesses is legally gettable to across the land. And I hope the Access Committee figures that out. It isn't just like we want to use it, we're going to use it. You don't want to have all this going into court. You know, you want things like we had on Omaha Road for years. You know, thank you.
All right,
Jake,
thanks.
if I can jump in to your original question, within the past 6 months, I have run across 2 situations, which I think are confirmed legally, in which town meeting had voted a certain way in town, and it's shown as a town way on the town maps, but it was never registered at the registry office in Barnstable, the real estate registry office. So in fact, the town doesn't own the road, even though it's shown on the town maps as a town way. So
Oh.
be careful,
Hmm.
be careful.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it might be some cases where the opposite effect might have happened too.
My phone is getting ready to die, so if I disappear.
Hey, this is Tom. John, you have what you were saying. You have what you need.
Yes, I thought it was an excellent discussion. I appreciate everyone's time.
Yep. I thought it was excellent
you.
too.
Me too.
All right,
Very
I'm going to
good.
call for an adjournment.
Tom, thank you for taking the notes. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll
And
get them
Tom,
out to everybody.
When
Thank you,
you
Tom.
do notes, can you just remember to put down topic for future discussion, boat regulation 8.6?
8.6, yeah, that's the, yeah.
Owner or operator language. I'm going to do a memo for SAB today.
Thank you.
All right.
And Tom, we need to figure out when we're going to get together with the SAB again too.
Yeah, we gotta, I think that's a nightmare waiting to happen because, you know, Becca said or Nancy said we got 7 regulars. And if
Well,
we bring somebody in, I don't think you can bring an alternate in to be president or chair.
Well, first of all,
Yeah.
let's get together with what we have right now. There's 7 of us
Yeah.
and an alternate. So let's just do that. And it's technically Dave still is the chair, but he doesn't want to be anymore.
So we have to officially transfer that
Yeah,
over.
we need to figure
So.
out the new chair. So
Okay. I'll look into some things.
Well, do you want me to just send a note, say, hey, let's have a meeting and
why don't you do
And
that? Go
here's
ahead.
here's the 3 or 4 topics we need to discuss.
That's
All
fine.
Yeah.
That's fine, Tom. That'd be great.
right. And we'll see where it goes from here.
Good.
I'll look at
Okay.
the tide chart too. Yeah.
All right. It's probably going to be next month, I would guess.
Yeah. Well, I'll look at the tide chart.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right,
you.
guys. Hey, thanks for everybody.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
your,
everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you,
your time
Tom.
and energy.
Bye.
All right.
Talk
Bye-bye.
later, John.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I can figure out